I am. I'm at my yeah. So I'm just here at my. I'm in my old room actually, the room in my parents' house, which my brother has now colonized. So it's got all his,
Colonized.
it's got his
Colonized.
posters, everything, literally. He's
Yeah.
decorated more than I ever decorated my own room. So
Yeah, because I was thinking, I'm like, what house has like wallpaper in one room but doesn't have wallpaper in another?
yeah,
And I was like, because usually all the walls are the same. So that's what tipped me off. I'm like, I bet he's in a different house. Anywho, okay. So,
no, it's very perceptive. Okay,
okay. So, just for context, we had gotten into, or you had asked me, what kind of questions do I
yeah,
have? And I do have a question, but it's like kind of like up, it's very open-ended, and I'm worried that it's going to take a long time to answer within the time span that we have. Even though I can have a conversation for hours and hours and hours and hours, which is why I think it would be good. Or we have like two different ways we could go about it. And you asked me like a logistical, like, what are your functional logistical questions? I think it's actually a logistical question because knowing kind of how much time it'll take, right, to answer
yeah,
it, we might want to queue it up for later.
yeah. That's fine.
Yeah.
I've got. Look, we'll see how far we get, and if we find we need another hour, that's fine. We can book in another hour.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. This might actually be like so many conversations, Jack. Are you sure?
That's fine. That's why I
That's
have an
fine.
hourly rate.
Okay. 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 What do I want to get out of this? Hold on.
Anytime.
um uh because yeah, I think it's just really important to set this up before we get started. And um yeah. I don't know. I have what my husband calls a brainworm.
Yeah.
And a brainworm is something that I hyperfixate on. And also, I have ADHD, you guys, so
Mm-hmm.
there is kind of that element involved. So I don't know how much it mixes with the, typology. That's actually a very interesting thing is like how typology, and then also um, how do mental health stuff come into play and trauma and things like that. You would like it. I think that's why typology is really attractive to me. But anywho, yeah, I just I need to figure out like what I want to get out of this conversation so that we can figure out, how we want to um handle like this session and the next sessions and stuff like that. So it is like useful to like talk about it in. So okay, anyways, you get my point.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just like kind of want to just keep talking to you, Jack. I have I feel like it's kind of gonna be never ending until I feel satisfied. And because like I will warn you, like
Yeah.
you said, okay, we could just book another session.
Yeah.
Okay, but the other night I had like a 6 to 8 hour conversation with someone, and we talked about religion um and well, we covered a lot more than just religion, but we can talk. And then we usually get to the point where it's 2 a.m. for him and it's 11 p.m. for me, and my husband is waiting for me to go to bed, and I'm just talking on the phone, and he is right next to me and he's doodling and stuff, or not doodling. He does this professionally, right? So he's trying to like work and stuff, and then eventually like he'll be like, "We need to go to bed." I'm like, okay. So what I'm saying with that example, right, is Jack, are you saying like we're gonna be booking like 6 sessions because each session is an hour?
Well,
6
okay.
sessions I just had basically with my friend the other night.
Okay. Look, what I'd say is this, okay?
Okay.
If the questions are all going to be about learning all about socionics,
Yes.
it may actually be cheaper to just
Okay.
buy my course.
Okay, I think I'll do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'll do that. Okay, check.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna table that. All right. So focus on the session then. Sorry. You're the pro here. So I don't want to step on your toes at all. Because this is your channel.
That's fine. I mean, there's not going public anyway, so
yeah, true.
That's besides the point.
Well, no.
I can do to give you the best value in this.
Right, gotcha. I think like I'm considering having it public, you know. So I think it's good that it's being recorded and it's private because it allows me to focus. But then I also want it to go public later because I think there were some really good discussions. And I think it will just create more discussions. And also, like, I would hate to leave people hanging without, you know, like that would irritate me. Like, oh, that would be so like, that would hurt. You know, So if I was in that position, I would not like it. So how about I propose in this session, let's not answer all of those other questions I had.
Sure.
Yeah. And let's kind of do the standard, you know, the follow-up number 2, what you typically do.
Well, the thing is, the follow-up, right?
Yeah.
The follow-up exists to, one, make sure we are aligned on what the final typing is. And then
that's going to be a tough one.
Well, I think that in which case we should do that. If that's the tough one, we should definitely deal with that first.
Yeah, but like that's what I'm saying is like, I have to understand it for myself for us to be aligned, and that might take some time. I don't.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So that's I'm trying to. Yeah.
Anywho. What were maybe what if I narrow it down to, you know, you had a chance to watch the LIE and also the SEE and also LSE videos. What parts of LIE, which is the one I think was most likely for you, what ones of that didn't quite resonate so well for you?
So within LIE, which ones didn't resonate with me?
Yeah, which parts of LIE didn't resonate? What could be a barrier, an obstacle to you seeing that one as your type?
I actually resonated with most of it, but here's the thing, though. Like that, to me, that doesn't exactly prove anything too much, right? Because like, you know, I'm noticing typology, there's a lot of variations within the community and what people think.
Yeah.
And so I think it would, like, trying to get to the source of the truth of like, okay, this one video, like, sure, I resonate with it, but is what it's saying the truth?
Yeah.
You know? And so I have to, that's why it takes a long time, right? Because like I'm going to have to cross-reference some things, probably read a few books, and catch up on socionics as a whole. And then also just trying to understand, like, why has it come about? What is the interpretational differences between MBTI and socionics that people feel the need to develop a new system? Why do we keep on creating new systems? What is up with that? You know?
Yeah, there's been a sort of splintering effect at the moment.
A splintering
where,
effect, yeah.
Yeah, you've got OP, you've got Voltology, you've got cognitive personality theory.
Mm-hmm.
You've got, just off the bat, 3 relatively new systems. Cognitive personality theory is probably the newest out of them. Before that, you had Podlair.
Okay, so all of that is crazy to me because I feel like we're not. This is my first impression. I'm a newbie, so this might be incorrect. But my first impression is, why are we just diving right into these nuances so quickly?
Yeah.
Why aren't we starting from a foundation that we agree on? You know, and then we go from there. Because then we can all like come back to this point. If disagreements happen, we can come back to this point.
I think it's because there is no sort of united community that makes, unilateral decisions or collective decisions. We have the reality is that the MBTI got there first in the West, and that was brought up by what then became the Myers-Briggs company, and that was like corporation-owned,
which had corporational intentions too. That's interesting. Yes, extremely corporate, wealth-driven.
Yes, and you have a number of MBTI-inspired, Jungian-inspired theorists as well, like Law Thompson Bentz, Linda Barron, these sorts of figures, also adding to sort of the theory in terms of the cognitive functions. There's been more of a development of cognitive function-oriented people on the internet as well. I used to be quite connected to that. Socionics actually uniquely was not of that sort of a Western splinter group, that came up with its own ideas from the Western canon. It developed parallel to MBTI slightly later, like in the 70s and 80s, in Lithuania and the Soviet states.
Ooh.
So it's not like the others. It's not a West something which evolved as a response to the MBTI. It evolved in parallel alongside the MBTI, but in the East, ideas, and same with the MBTI evolved in response to Jung's ideas. But it's a sibling. It's a sibling of MBTI. It's not a descendant of the MBTI.
That is very interesting because it's just. I think actually in my research I'm bound to actually get into religion for this, or because of this, because religion, I mean, that kind of follows like the same sort of lifespan of religions, right? So what if I did a deep dive into religion, and then I could derive some commonalities, and then that could give me some insights. But that's where my mind is thinking in this next video. In this video, I'm trying to like verbalize my thought processes because I didn't the last video, and I didn't realize that didn't help anybody. So doing it differently this time.
What I would say is that if you can think of MBTI as being like Catholicism, and something like OP as being like Protestantism.
Exactly. Why did they splinter?
Orthodox. Socionics is like Russian Orthodox, came out of an earlier Orthodox movement, which both Catholicism and Russian Orthodox came from, which would have been Jung. That's how I would,
Right, and then there's also different motivations, right? So someone can splinter because of an event. Someone can splinter because that sort of stuff. And so I think there's some interesting stuff we could compare, again. But and then also politics, same thing, right? Like, can you imagine a world where Democrats, Republicans didn't exist just yet? I'm talking in the USA, in terms of the USA. And it's kind of the same thing, right? Like today, it's like, oh, it's always existed. But actually, in the past, there was a point where people just talked with each other, and there wasn't that. I'm assuming, but I don't think, and then you start to form banners.
Yeah. There was a brief period after the American Revolution where you had basically no real parties, but it was brief.
Right.
But by the time, very quickly, the Federalists everyone was just Federalist to begin with, but very quickly rifts formed between Thomas Jefferson and Alexander Hamilton. So you end up with the Federalists, and then you had Democratic Republicans.
Yeah, Hamilton was so charismatic. I love that.
Yeah.
An asshole, but charismatic nevertheless. It's a shame he died early.
We typed him LIE. We actually, in our benchmark, me and my team typed him LIE.
What team?
Oh, I've got a diagnostic team. Regrettably, I haven't had time to make good use of them in recent couple of years. But people who are very good at typing, I've seen them be good at typing. They demonstrated that in a written form. I had put together a little team, and we often look at different celebrities, fictional characters. It used to be a lot more active a number of years ago.
Okay, it doesn't exist anymore.
The team is there. Like, there's a WhatsApp group where we chat things over, but we haven't worked on any projects in ages. I've been too busy building the course, building all these other resources. I've become a lot more oriented because I've had to be.
Yeah, actually, like I was thinking about, you starting a family. That's actually something that has been on my mind for years, and I don't know why. Like, I'm so hesitant to start, and like I don't actually know when. But I really admire people such as yourself that did it, because I feel like it's like really scary.
It is scary.
So I just want to tell you that because of that thumb thing that happened last video. I was like, I didn't have anything like really great to say, but I wanted to say that. So I think that's very courageous of you.
Okay, I appreciate it. I think it is the sort of thing where fewer people are doing it now. And that's also, on the one hand, people are responding to this idea that we're going to overpopulate the earth because the population is increasing. But actually, if you look at the sort of trends in data, we're actually heading towards the opposite. Recently, we started going below replacement rates.
Exactly.
And so on one hand, I think, people say it's courageous to have kids. On the other hand, I think if it's becoming rare enough for people to see it as courageous, that I find a bit worrying. Look, it's tough, it's difficult, but I think it used to be that everyone had a very tough life, and so this was part of it. And now I think it's, I don't know. I think that there's a perception now. It's like being seen as a rarer thing in certain groups or communities. Usually the majority communities, ethnic minorities, I think are more effective at keeping up population rates. But think of, say, the WASP families in the UK, sort of just Anglo-Saxon families. It's going down.
I would wager a guess, because like I come. Oh, sorry, there's some interference there. Is that on my end? I'm just hearing.
That's fine. I think it might be. Yeah, the connection's not so great here, unfortunately, but I'm hearing everything you're saying.
Okay. So I have a very strong tie to my Asian roots. Okay, not actually that strong. I'm realizing there's definitely some. I've kind of departed a little bit, but I'm aware of them. I have made a lot of life decisions because of or not made a lot of life decisions, but what I'm trying to say is it has such great influence on people, on all of your life decisions. And one of them is this sense of legacy. And I wonder if what it means to a culture, or the cultures that invest more in legacy, genetic legacy, if they have more of an interest in bearing children, because there's that kind of thing. For me, I've kind of been thinking about, well, in my mind, whenever I'm like, well, maybe I actually don't want kids. There's always this like, no, you do. Why? Because it's an investment for the future. Because, and I don't think I don't actually know how I'll have that conversation with my kid, but frankly, like it is, as you get older, you're going to get to this point where you don't have anybody. All your friends are died off, your family members, everything. And especially like what's especially important is, if you have older siblings, right? If you're the youngest, then that's less so, but I'm like, or if you have opposite, if you're the oldest, you have younger, all of that to say, like, kids for me, they're an investment for the future but like I'm still trying to, figure out how that's going to impact my career and what I want to do. And, like I told you before, my goal has been completed. I've been positioned into success, right? Like that was my goal as a kid. I wanted to achieve a position because I didn't know what would happen next. 30 years is a long time. Like I didn't know what I would want then. So I was like, okay, well, I can figure out that like get to this point, but then now I'm at that point. I'm like, ah, shit. I need to understand like what how this all fits together, because I want a lot of things and they kind of contradict each other sometimes.
It
So I
sounds
don't
to
see it
me.
playing nicely.
It sounds to me, but you've actually been quite successful in terms of one, getting yourself into a financially successful and secure position, and doing
Right.
it while also finding your life partner.
Yeah, that was key. That was actually
Yeah,
one of my objectives. And I
yeah,
think like I regret to say this out loud, but there are specific things that I was looking for and that would play nicely with my overarching thing. And like, yes, it sounds really sterile. I would like to believe in that kind of romancy sort of loveness, but if my partner didn't have those things, like, they wouldn't be fitting in my life, sort of. Yeah, so he met those things and he's it plays nicely with what I think of is in terms of my future, and that's why he's my partner, and everything else is just extra, you know
yeah.
and I would like to like be more romantic about it, and I want to say something like, well, he is like my this and that, but like, yeah, I don't know if that's a me thing or everyone thing, and we're all just lying about it. I don't know.
It's a cultural thing. I say cultural, not in terms of not in terms of ethnic minorities, but in terms of a cultural shift in the West. There used to be that a marriage, the first thing for a marriage was its practicality.
Right,
It needs
yeah.
to be a functioning union, which can create children, but also sustain those children financially over time.
Right.
But
Yeah.
the evolution in the culture of the need for love is
Mhm.
relatively recent.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and sure, I think it certainly brings an emotional fulfillment to it, but it also, I think, has made relationships almost a bit more fickle. What happens when that feeling of love is actually an infatuation, and then it runs out, and then you see these increase in divorce rates, I see from the boomers, and eventually you see a deterioration in marriage, full stop. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's good
Yeah.
I think you need a practical grounding in your romance. Otherwise, the romance won't last, or it won't lead to something stable and productive.
Right, which is why, like, when my friends get into situations, I just try to, like, turn the other direction. I'm like, "I can't stop you from doing what you're doing, but I really don't, see this going very well." Like, for example, there's this relation or the opposite. So for example, you know, my brother, he's an ENFP. I love him so much, and we're constantly talking, right? Can be kind of hard to talk to him sometimes because he's always going all over the place. But anywho, I love talking with him. And yeah, like I think his relationship, everybody around me was like, oh, it's not going to work out. It sucks, you know? But I'm like, you guys are really silly. This is actually a perfect setup for success. Yeah, you know, in the beginning, it's just kind of like lots of discomfort. But the fact is, this is going to be a long relationship, you know? And so I guess like yeah, short term there's stuff to work out and everything, but like it's almost like saying like, oh, like just because a boat has a hole in it, it's no longer a boat. You know, it's like, no, maybe you just fix it up and then it floats because it's a boat, because it's gonna work. Yeah. So anyways, I just stuff like that.
Yes.
Huh?
Thought experiment. You know, the ship of Theseus, a thought experiment.
No, do tell.
It's where a boat is sort of slowly repaired over time, so that not a single piece of that boat was part of that boat when it was first launched. Is that still the same boat?
Whoa! Oh! Okay, I'm not going to dig into that one because that's really fun. But overall, I would say, depending on your definition, yes or no. It would have.
Okay, if you say yes. Okay, you say yes. What if someone else, when each part was sort of taken off the boat, was able to, through advanced engineering, piece it back together slowly over time, building another boat out of those discarded pieces of the ship of Theseus? Is that boat now the new ship of Theseus, or is it the boat which Theseus is still riding?
Okay, so this is kind of like conversations where, and I hate this. I hate it when people bring this up because it's so disgusting to me. When people say that lasagna is cake, and I'm like, no, it's not. At least I don't want it to be. I don't want it to be cake because you're going to ruin cake for me. It's like that, you know, like I would have to dive into linguistics and understand how that works and stuff to really have an opinion, because that stuff kind of boggles me. Like, yeah.
Just one thing. We're in danger of sliding into sort of like a very sort of social friends conversation rather than a typology conversation where you're getting information on typology from me. If you're comfortable with this conversation, I'm happy, but only if you're comfortable with this kind of conversation. Otherwise, we can go to typology or into conversation if you prefer.
You should definitely lead it. My assumption here is you're constantly scanning me for information. And so anything I say is going to contribute to the goal.
Well, then the goal is really getting you to a stage where you understand what your type is, and you can then use that for your own benefit.
Yeah, but like that's going to take a long time. So
yeah, I'm already pretty sure you're an LIE. It's rather a question of how I can help you to either know you're an LIE through learning, or if I do find something that is so incongruent to completely change my point of view, then that's also useful. But
okay, we could go down that route if we wanted, you know, contradictions. And I think that's where you were headed in the first place, where it's like, is there anything that didn't align? I can't think of anything that doesn't align, at least for the LIE description, specifically the video that you sent over to me. However, one of the things that let's see here. I was really curious as to why it differs from MBTI.
Yes.
Yeah. Maybe you can go into that.
Yes. So it evolved in a different place from a different person with a different focus, more of a intellectual focus. When it came to Austra Augustina Vichutia, or Austra Augusta, she was an academic. She was a Lithuanian academic. She was actually a dean of pedagogical studies at Vilnius. So she was very interested in finding a way of making this into a proper theory with infrastructure that is theoretical. Right. She wasn't especially scientific, but she was definitely about a theoretical infrastructure. I think that's important to keep in mind. But when it came to Isabel Briggs Myers, she liked writing children's stories.
Yeah.
She was still an intelligent woman, but she was not so interested in the rigor of setting out a theoretical infrastructure to anywhere near the degree that Augustina Vichutia.
I agree that the book that they wrote was extremely light, and there was like so many. Yeah. And then you look at Jungian works, and it's like it just goes on forever and ever. And
yes.
And
then there's another thing I'd say is that there are two different attitudes you can take from defining a system based on dichotomies. MBTI is dichotomy based, so is Socionics. But in MBTI, we only really talk about 4 dichotomies: extrovert, introvert, intuitive sensing, thinking, feeling, and judging, perceiving. Because those are the ones which are most loosely mentioned by Jung.
The top 4, but it doesn't take into account the ego blocks, which is all of the cognitive function types and how they interact together.
Oh, well, blocks is more the structuring of the functions in their positions, of the elements in their function blockings in Model A, or in a 4-function model such as ENTJ, TENI, SCFI. What I mean by dichotomies, I mean more type dichotomies. I like extrovert, introvert, intuition, sensing, feeling, thinking, judging, perceiving. We only really talk about those 4 in MBTI. And yeah, that is the minimum required to get to 16 types is 4 dichotomies. But the problem there is that that's not the max. That's not an exhaustive list of dichotomies that exist in relation to these 16 types.
I agree with that. Okay.
So basically, yes, you can use a minimum of 4 dichotomies to tell apart 16 things. But if there are 16 things, that means there are actually 15 different ways in which they differ in some meaningful way. There's also a sort of very empty academic extra 16th one, which is called the null dichotomy. So it's just, that's always tax on the end of every single list. Really, in terms of meaningful dichotomies, those meaningful dichotomies are always equal to the number of things being defined minus 1. So if you have let's say you have a
process of elimination by contradiction.
Well, not a contradiction. It's exhaustive. It's every single way that these 16 things can differ. There are 15 ways in which these 16 things can differ.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I actually really like the rigorousness of that. You made me remember something that I do. I'm not sure about, and it's actually comes from chat. You know, because it's a very valuable place to just like see other people's perspectives. And what I don't understand like subtypes just yet. I've been diving into it and such, but like I find that, you know, as we're talking about like exhaustive lists, right? You know, someone suggested the ESI. Could you tell me why
Sorry, Lilette,
I'm not an ESI?
So my apologies. The connection went off for 15 seconds. I missed what you were saying those past 15 seconds of that.
Sure. Can you tell me why I'm not an ESI? It's something that came from chat.
Right. Yeah.
And it's because we were talking about like the exhaustive list, and I see the people talking about subtypes as that being like they're going through that exhaustive list. So
right.
Yeah.
What I would say is this. ESI is a type where first and foremost, the thing they're focused on is their personal attitudes, how they personally feel towards things. They know very quickly whether they like the sound of something or they don't like the sound of something or
I
someone.
agree with that. Oh. Except for the someone part.
Right. So ESI is able to tell quite quickly if they like a person or not, what relationship they want to have to that person or not. They're very confident in relying on personal value judgments. What they're not confident on are data-driven, how things work, how well is it working judgments. They appreciate and value that greatly. They definitely look for and desire competence in others, but they are not actually confident themselves in estimating how competent and capable things are, how things are working, learning from large amounts of data and knowing what data is relevant and how it's going to be applied in a new situation. They are a type, this is a type which is far better at finding the experts that they trust, the people they know to give reliable factual information and having a close relationship on them so they can leverage that capability for their own decision making.
Interesting. I would feel very uncomfortable with that because to me, it comes down to me. It doesn't come to anyone else. It comes down to me. And also just like the whole social aspect of like, you get the feeling someone, I get an impression of someone, which kind of can come across as a feeling, but I'm not tied to it. I feel like feelings you're you can be anchored. But my perception of someone will change based off of the information they give me.
Yes.
So I tend to, like, all my life, I've had difficult relationships because I find them very interesting. And so my husband will be like, I don't understand why you fight with, I kind of like name my people, like give them nicknames. I don't know why you fight with Florida man, all the time, and you're friends, and I would say it's because the relationship's beneficial, in some aspect. And I don't like saying this, because people think like, oh, she's evil, but the fact of the matter is we do choose relationships that are beneficial to us, right? Like, I don't, refute that for me, and then maybe I'll understand. But
and the ESI can do that as well, but they are very good at and very clear in their minds of estimating the character of a person and building the appropriate level of distance to that person accordingly. Okay. So they'll find the way of work that they'll know who they should work with, who they shouldn't. They'll prefer to keep they're perfectly, some people very loyal and very, very close, and other people at a distance.
Right. Or I'll flirt with danger. I'll get really close, because I feel like I can mentally just disconnect that person.
Right.
Like, it's like, oh, you're not relevant to me anymore. Like, bye-bye.
Right.
I don't have any problem with that.
LIEs, they value assessments of character. They do have, it's not as if they don't have any sort of feeling in terms of how they feel towards people. They do. They just don't trust in it. They don't trust in the subjective evaluation as much. They kind of need, they cycle between stages of naivety and over trustingness, and then getting burnt, and then becoming overly distrustful and setting up tests and needing data trends over time about the person to know if they can trust them or not. Because they're not confident enough in that subjective evaluation and then just acting on that subjective evaluation.
Right.
LIs keep things open, despite their desire for a certainty to act upon.
Right.
They, despite that, when they're less confident, they keep things open-ended.
Right. Exactly. I agree with that.
An ESI never keeps things open-ended. They are not an open-ended type. They're very much leaning to, okay, I know the character of this person now. I don't want to reopen the book and re-examine it. I don't like doing that.
This is what I disagree with. This is what I disagree with, because this is why my family isolates my father. And yeah, okay, my father's an asshole, but he has a lot of information. Like, so I keep that open because he like everybody, no matter how assholery you are, there is benefit to be had, there's just degrees of benefit, and that's why you have to rigorously prioritize, and that's what I would. So for example, like actually, I also want to touch on another point. The whole like naivety, yes, that has affected me so much. I feel like I look back at so many different points in my life. Like for example, this kid, he made my sister this kid on the playground was like, "Hey, do these tricks for me," and my sister could do tricks, and I'll give you like something. I think it's water or something. It was a hot day, I think. And so she does the tricks, or I tell her to do the tricks because I'm the eldest, and then he doesn't give us the stuff, and then I was like, I don't understand what happened. I remember having that moment as a kid. I was like, but he said that if we did the thing, then we would get the thing. Why don't I have the thing already? So, and then that, progress, recurred in my life, and it sucks. It sucks being blindsided like that. My husband's really good at the character of a person. And like, for example, I almost got sucked into a Ponzi scheme. And then my husband, I was telling him about it and the ideas behind it and stuff like that. And he's like, honey, don't go to the next meeting. And I felt so foolish, because they seem like really interesting people, and then it was a Ponzi scheme. I'm like, shit. That's I was an idiot. So
the LIE needs that their dual is the type which is known as the guardian, the ESI, because they deeply value someone who can say in quite absolute terms, that person over there, I got a bad feeling about the person. I don't want you going anywhere near them.
Right.
LIE values that. Because out of all the gammas, out of all the gamma types, every type within every quadra brings something from outside that quadra. The LIE brings extrovert intuition from outside of gamma. So out of all the gammas, they're the most open-minded. They're the most, but what if? Maybe we can keep that thing open for longer than it needs to be, because actually there could be something here.
Right. And I used to think that was NE until I realized I gather information and then I stop once I reach a conclusion.
Yes.
It's sufficient enough to reach a solid conclusion. But even then, I still leave it open just a smidgen, because if anything comes my way and I have to reevaluate it against and test it against my current knowledge of the thing, so just kind of building on. And then also like the whole like testing thing, I definitely do that. When I was dating my husband in college, my mother-in-law, she approached me and she's like, you need to stop playing mind games. And I was like, what? I was so offended. I was like, that is not. And then I realized it was testing his loyalty. And that was extremely important to me. And I was guilty. I didn't want to tell anyone that was what I really valued, because it sounds so tyrannical, and gross.
Yeah.
Like that's what people think of when, like some serfdom. So that's another thing. So I agree with that. And then the other bit is the judgments of a person. Actually, sorry, we already kind of covered that, so no need. Yeah.
What you say sounds just about right. LIs can, when they're unsure of loyalty, they can play these mind games a bit. They need to know the person is loyal. They really
Yep.
do. They don't know quickly themselves if it's the case, which is why the ESI is so good at making it so clear they are loyal. What they say is what they mean, and when they do it, they will. When they say they'll do it, they will do it. And they are.
I don't always do that.
No, LIEs I don't always do that, but ESIs,
I don't always do that.
and LIEs does like that in ESIs, that they are very much reliable people in that respect.
I will push boundaries a lot. So if I know that somebody says one thing, but I can get away with this much, then I'll get away with that much up until them getting mad. And then I will, be like, okay, this is the maximum they can handle. This is, this is what. So I definitely am very much, I would say, aware of like, if I did this, actually, no, that's not true. Sometimes I'm not. Sometimes I'm very, very wrong. I flipped over like a Discord server the other day.
Flipped it over?
That's what my friend said. Or turned it upside down. Because actually I don't really know what happened. I was having fun, and then I realized like, and there's like, and then everybody hopped on, and we started. In my mind, we were checking things and testing things, but then I realized towards the end that they were actually upset with me and they thought I was a bad person, and that I was playing games with them, and it's like this recurring like theme that I've just like, I always get to this point in the some people where people are like, oh, I don't like this person. And then I'm like, explain why, or like, tell me where this happened. And I just can't in my mind trace it back to what happened. And I haven't been able to, and I probably won't. But I that's why like my friends know me. Like I'll like keep up like in the server, I was like arguing with the two mods, and I told them, I'm like, because they told me, or someone told me like, oh, you can, read the rules or what have you. And I was like, why should I read the rules? If I do something wrong, I may get a wrist, slap, right?
Yeah.
And then I'll know the rule that's applicable to me. So I don't need to read all the rules, because most likely I'm not going to get banned straight off. That's not what happens in basically every Discord server that I'm in. Sorry, qualification. So yeah, so I'll push boundaries, and I've been told several times by different people I push boundaries, and don't know where they are, and I have to be explicitly told, and that's why I think I explicitly tell people what I need from them, because I'm hoping that they'll do the same thing. Because I'm so in the dark about how I should act with this person, and so I just kind of fall back on like, well, I'm just gonna like this is too hard for me, so I'm just gonna say what I need to say and then see what happens, and then maybe that will give me information on how I should act.
You need the other person to set clear boundaries. If the other person,
clear.
If the other person doesn't set clear boundaries, you end up unintentionally running all over them.
Oh yeah. Or revealing public information about, or personal information about them, because I assumed that it was public,
Oh yeah. That's
stuff like that.
That's something I at least get into trouble over as well, quite a lot. It's
because it's an observation. It's like, isn't it visible to everyone? You're wearing a red shirt. If I said you're wearing a red shirt, I don't get in trouble. But for some reason, for some other things, I get in trouble, and I don't understand.
Right.
So
yeah, that's something which LIEs, ILEs also have trouble with. Low introverted ethics types are not good at that kind of thing, and that's why they benefit great. They benefit from being told by the other person.
Right.
But where it's different is that for an ESI, there's like very clear, explicit boundaries. You will do not do this with me. Don't do that with me again. It's very clear.
Which I don't understand.
Yeah.
Because some of it doesn't make sense.
Oh yeah, it's meant to be grounded in personal values. It's not grounded in any kind of logic. It's how you feel and how comfortable you are with something. Now LIEs also struggle because their blind spot is sort of a comfort and harmony of their environment. So easily over-intensify the environment around them because they're not entirely aware that's made the environment uncomfortable. So there's a bit of introverted sensation in there as well as introverted ethics.
Oh God, introverted sensation. I know I don't have that. You know, yesterday we had like a holiday thingy where I knew it was important to my mom, right?
Yeah.
I go, but I'm like sick. I'm actually sick right now. But I went, I like threw up and then my husband's like, we should not do this. And you know, because we parked in the zoo and whatever. And then I just got done throwing up and I was like, but I'm better now. He's like, oh, you got all the sick with that? And I was like, yeah, I won't do it again, I promise. And then he was so mad at me, he wouldn't talk to me for like 30 minutes. And then I was like, okay, something's up with him. So I went over to my sister. She's really good at like the feeling kind of stuff. And so I'm like, okay, here's the situation. Can you go talk to him? And then she's like, well, tell me the info. And then I told her the info and she's like, oh, well, you're both sick and you still made him go. You should go home. I was like, check. Okay. And I went over, I was like, all right, guys, we're going home. And then we went home. He's better now, but, and I'm a little better now. I'm not puking. So that's good.
I'm glad you're in a better state of health as a result.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that to some degree it's the effect of introverted ethics. I can clearly see that this is something which is weak in you. I can clearly see that introverted sensing is something which is weak in you, which means that really, assuming gamma values, LIE is really the only option.
But okay, can you explain the introverted feeling? Because I feel like I have pretty strong principles, you know.
Oh yeah. Well, the principles are different.
But I feel pretty strongly about them, so wouldn't I have FI?
Okay. So a principle is like an inner rule. Like, I don't do this. I don't do those things.
Okay, so Batman rule, basically.
Yeah, it's a code, almost like a code.
It's a code, okay.
Yeah, introverted ethics doesn't work in codes. It'll happily contradict itself, introverted feeling, because it's different for each person. So it's like, I like that person I do not like. It will be insincere of me to be friendly with that person because I don't like them. And I'm going to keep that person that distance from that person this distance from. I don't like this, I don't like that. You may like something, and then the exact same thing in a different situation you may actually like. And it's about being true being true to your attitudes, not having a principle which is meant to be applied regardless of the situation.
But I feel like I have that, right?
In terms of the principles, or in terms of the personal attitudes and being true to those attitudes regardless of the situation?
Yeah, it doesn't have everybody has personal attitudes, right? So,
well, ILEs are kind of, for example, an ILE is almost divorced from their personal attitudes. They struggle,
which I appreciate.
To even,
yeah,
they struggle to even acknowledge them within themselves. And an LIE doesn't struggle to acknowledge them within themselves. They just struggle to place their confidence in it and use that to drive their decision making.
Okay, so I do have it.
Yeah. It's not a blind spot for you. It's just very weak. And it's hard for you to also pick up on the intentions of others and then form your personal attitudes towards them based on your reading of their intentions and your relationship to them.
Okay, yeah, the intentions part, I agree. Like, I just cannot. Yeah. Yeah, betrayal is real.
Yep.
Okay.
And betrayal mucks up an LIE. If an ILE is betrayed, it's like the ILE wasn't really expecting anything different because they don't even think in terms of trust. For an LIE, placing trust in someone is a big deal. And then when it's betrayed, it mucks them up because they don't know what's happened here. It's like suddenly their core has been shattered. And so they then overreact. They become overly distrustful because they want to protect themselves in that situation again. They don't know exactly the nuances of each situation, when to open up, when to close down, because they're not good at reading.
Makes me feel dumb.
Reading character. Yeah,
I hate that. It makes me feel like an idiot.
Yeah, and LIEs hate to feel like an idiot. This is the type. Well, most types hate to feel like an idiot. But an LIE,
tell me a type that loves being an idiot.
Exactly. But LIEs, they know they're competent in terms of giving the information. I'll be able to go away and learn this and understand. This is why you really want the course, so you can go away and you can learn all of it. So then you can come back to me and you're now an expert in the course material.
No, I'm very broad, I feel like.
And suddenly you can figure out how it all works. Meanwhile, what was that?
Our internet's all funky. Just ignore.
You said you're very broad.
Yeah, I feel like I get into everything.
Yeah.
So I don't become a master, jack of all trades.
Sure. I don't mean like becoming like a specialist. I don't mean that. I mean know enough of a material to be competent in making decisions based on it.
Got it. Okay.
It's an area of knowledge that's relevant to your needs. You're going to want to develop a competence in understanding it.
Right. Being adequate, not a master. Being adequate.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't mean a master. Yeah, fine. The point is someone to ask you questions which are relevant to what you want, you'll be able to answer that because you understand. But it's very important for LIEs to develop their competence in anything they grapple with that's important to them. So they will make sure they go away and build up that knowledge base. So as you say, you want to read a number of books, you want to take in data on your terms and decide from that what things are, where it goes, how this makes sense, why is this the case. You're not satisfied simply narrowing down the options because you don't necessarily know if those options themselves actually work in reality and are relevant to you. So this is where really you need to independently and autonomously bring together the data. All I can do is I can give you access to where the data is.
Right. Yes, exactly. I love that. Yeah. And then, like adopting different activities and such, they can help you in other activities. They can help accelerate other activities. Like, for example, or you know, an example, we're kind of coming into time, but you get the gist of what I'm.
Okay. Well, my time is only got 2 minutes. It's fine.
Okay. This has been a very enjoyable talk, Jack.
Thank you, Lilette.
Yeah.
So what I think will be good then is would you like this to be made public?
Sure. Yes, actually, yes, because I have some really great conversations I'd like to continue.
Right. Good. So let's make this public. And in terms of the course, I think that sounds to me like the natural best step. That is the same, but that costs the same as 6 conversations. But you'll be getting just under 24 hours worth of me talking.
Okay. Yes.
Well, 2 hours maybe. It's a lot, and it's a lot of information, and it's basically everything that I know about Socionics. In a series of lectures and slides, video lectures and slides.
Okay. Yeah. And then also I just had an idea for your channel.
Yep.
So what if you did like to help other people's understanding, specifically mine. What if you did a kind of like a one-on-one with somebody who is comfortable with debating against you and you against them, and then you talk about things that would be really interesting.
I've tried that.
Really?
I put up a video once asking people, come debate me. The problem is there aren't that many takers.
Maybe they are in a different. Oh, really?
Yeah, that's the bit. Oh, that's always been the difficulty. If there was someone in the regular common garden Myers-Briggs community who
I
was,
feel like I can think of a couple.
well, bring them. I'd
Okay.
love to.
Okay.
I've had debates with people from the splintering off systems, like
Okay.
ontology.
Nice.
Yeah.
I love it.
I'd had debate with someone from who was connected to OP. I've done these already, but the regular Myers-Briggs, the people there, I think, because Socionics is so much more complicated
Yeah.
than what they're used to,
Uh-huh.
they're like, I don't want to get into a debate with this guy.
Yeah.
And I'd much rather, have a conversation about it, but not really, I don't know enough to know if he's wrong or right. I just don't know. And then they'd have to have time to bridge the gap and haven't managed to find the time to really bridge the gap. So
yeah, and like, it doesn't really have to be like a full-on debate, like I think I'm right and you think I'm right, let's go. There could be different degrees of that where it's like, hey, like, but like I see you've already done that. Do you have the links to the videos?
yeah.
Is
Yeah,
it
I
the
can
one
give you
with
that.
like Michael Pierce and a
The-
few others?
Michael Pierce is a good example of someone who's clearly
It's the
intelligent, philosophical.
8 Mask Theory, right?
Yeah. Who was that?
8 Mask Theory is Michael Pierce, right?
The 8 Mask Theory. That doesn't ring a bell. I mean, I've read his book on motes and beams. He didn't talk about an 8 Mask Theory.
Okay.
Okay. Michael Pierce is someone who I consider a good friend.
Aw, nice.
A theoretical friend, certainly. A friend in terms of discussing theory, and
Got it.
rather than a theoretical friend. But
Check.
so we've a number of good exchange. He has actually inspired me into a number of theoretical developments from some of his ideas and his work. So he's
Okay.
technically a Myers-Briggs person, but he's not. He also has his own ideas of it. He hasn't developed his own entirely own theory. He's come up with interesting ideas and points of view, building on Myers-Briggs and Jungian theory. But we haven't had a debate. It's never been a debate. It's always been more of a discussion. And I think that's always been a bit more constructive in that way.
Yeah, I agree.
So he's a sort of person who I just want to, feed stuff from Socionics you might not already know, to see what he thinks about it. I've had maybe a few months or even a couple of years to process it and think about it, because he's not a sort of fast coming to realization person. He's a go away, think it through, ruminate, and suddenly he'll come out with some thoughts.
That's awesome.
But yeah, he's not a debate guy. He wouldn't do well in a debate. He's not that. That's not how his intelligence is geared. His intelligence is geared towards philosophical insight after years of thinking something through.
Cool.
He's not that kind of person. I'd love to have an MBTI debater. I once did have someone who was studying MBTI, Jung cognitive functions, who wanted to have a debate, but he was he might have been on weed or just drunk at the time.
He might have been on weed.
It wasn't. It wasn't. It didn't go well. He wasn't. Unfortunately, there are some people who know enough about the situation to know this is probably not a good idea, and he was. And there are some people who might know enough about MBTI to know this is a challenge, but I can still do it. But I think he was of the position of I don't know even enough to even know this is not a good idea, and so it didn't really do his point of view justice.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. It's interesting that you say do his point, or does his point justice, because that's another thing that I agree with understanding anything. Just because you see something and it's not really delivered well doesn't mean that the ideas they're in are wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
exactly.
Anywho. Oh, it's been such a pleasure, Jack. This has been great.
Well, I look forward to corresponding with you in the future. I'll send you links to these debates. And
perfect.
Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect.
Thank you. Thank you.
Lovely rest of your weekend. Take care.
You too. Bye.
Bye.